At this year's Gamescom, we caught up with Jason Carl, brand marketing manager at White Wolf, and Ian Thomas, narrative director on Bloodlines 2, to discuss the much anticipated Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, more specifically the story and world of the game. It is currently set to release on October 21st, but after a very long and fraught development journey, what will the Chinese Room have for the fans of the series? How linear will Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 be?
You open the map of Seattle, and I think at that stage it'll be between 6 or 9 different dots that you can visit, some of which are connected into the main story, some of which are, let's call them side missions, but you'll find that lore-wise they all connect into the whole story. But at that point, and I don't think we've been quiet about it, at that point Fire earns a position with the Camarilla, at least temporarily, and therefore is given permission to go freely through Seattle. There are definitely, as with any story, points which funnel you through a process, and we have 9 nights, I think it is, of story, but it's no longer the linear that you had in the introduction.
Can you tell us about the movement system in the game?
It's very true to the tabletop role-playing game Vampire the Masquerade, which is of course the foundation for Bloodlines. In the tabletop game, you can do all these things too with your character. Any vampire can, by using their blood or their vitae, they can do supernatural, superhuman feats like climb up walls, leap across rooftops, punch people through walls. But the older and stronger the vampire is, Fire is an elder of course, they can do those things to 11. So it's very much based on the lore. And it's been translated, I think, very beautifully into the experience that makes you feel like a vampire. You are clearly an outsider, and you're clearly not mortal. You're much better than that.
The main thing that we have pushed for with Fire's story is that experience of being a vampire, and a powerful one. As a result, you are a predator on humans. And we set it up to make it feel like the fastest way across the city is above ground. Because on ground, if you start doing weird things like that, and you start doing huge jumps, and obviously mortals get upset. Which is the masquerade of Vampire the Masquerade, pretending that vampires don't exist. So if you start doing that stuff at ground level, people get upset, cops might start shooting at you, and eventually the Camarilla take you into hand for breaking the illusion. So we wanted to make traversal across rooftops and kind of mid-rooftops almost the default for you, because it's the easiest way to get around the city for you. Because otherwise you have to pretend to be human, and that's disappointing.
I mean, you could call it Uber, I suppose, but yeah, it's much faster to jump across the rooftops, especially in a snowstorm and a blizzard. Yeah.
It was important to us to make it feel like you are not human and you are a predator. And that's part of being up on the rooftops looking down at these little pools of light, of life and experience going on, and being an outsider, I think, is part of that experience of being a vampire.
How do you keep the player sympathetic to a vampire character?
Vampires have an eternal struggle with their humanity versus the beast inside them. They are nocturnal predators. They do prey on mortals. They have morality, and they may attempt to stay on that path. Some do not. And the longer you're kindred in the story universe that we built, the more at risk you are of becoming less human. So Fire, of course, very old vampire, they have become more, let's say, comfortable with what they are. They've come to terms with the fact that the consequences of being a kindred in this universe carry a terrible price. But the consequences of not trying to balance humanity versus the beast are even worse.
How we've tried to set that up, really, so we've got Fire, who, as Jason says, is quite divorced from humanity, because they've seen everything. They've seen battles, wars, people die all the time, and they take their lives. And then we have Fabian, who's the voice in Fire's head, and also a playable character at times. Fabian is a native of Seattle. Fabian's only 100 years old, which is quite young by comparison. But the important thing is he really hasn't lost that fascination with humanity. He loves humanity, not biblically, but he's just fascinated by how people work and gets joy in all the little quirks and foibles. And that pairing of somebody who's divorced from humanity and somebody who finds it fascinating and finds the joy in life is really the core kind of dynamic in the story. And it's up to the player to decide how they're going to portray Fire. Are they going to stay the reserved, powerful, arrogant, superhuman creature, or are they going to lean into Fabian's delight in the world around them? And that's playing with humanity, which is right back to the role-playing game.
Why did you choose to have the protagonist start as so powerful rather than lower level?
So that was the story of the first one. And the important change we wanted to make, and it's one of the reasons, it was a conversation that was had when Paradox came to the Chinese Room in the first place, was the Chinese Room, as you know, are known for story, as I hope you know. And we wanted to tell a different story about being a vampire. If we had started right back at the low level, effectively we'd just be repeating the same story, and the story would be about somebody who came from humanity, somebody who was modern, gradually learning about the world of being a vampire, and the whole story would be that, with some politics wrapped around it. But it would be essentially the entry into that world. And we've seen that before, and we've played that in tabletop many times. What we wanted to tell was a particular political moment in what was happening in Seattle, and what would happen if, to go back to the kind of old Western trope, the stranger comes to town, which is a powerful creature, a powerful pebble is dropped into that pond, which isn't a still pond, it's bubbling already, and then you throw a rock in. It's the catalyst to a series of events, and we see the result over quite a short time period of putting that really powerful force into this space. And to do that, firstly, we have this idea, we have an elder. Secondly, we have to start putting some definition around that character, because it can't come from nothing. It has history, which the player helps define, and it has a legend that people in the city know. And so they have heard of this character, they've heard myths about this character, and that means that when the character appears on the stage, they have reactions, and the story starts because of those reactions. If we just drop a newbie in, who amongst the politics of the vampires is going to care?
I think it's important to remember too that in Bloodlines, the fledgling that you play is an agent for change. Their decisions affect the city and the outcome. The same is true in Bloodlines 2. Fire is also an agent of change, and Fire's decisions affect the city and the outcome as much as it does themselves. You are really looking at similar stories, but through very different ends of the telescope, which I think is really fun.
For more interviews, reviews, news, and more on the latest upcoming games, subscribe to PC Gamer.
Now there's a thing. Well then, welcome to the 21st century.